Hello, welcome to this edition of Focus on Parliament on Civic Space TV. I am Phillip Muliisa. On this episode, we want to look at the increasing mess on our missions in the different countries across the world, and we want to assess the role of Parliament in trying to address some of these challenges that keep emerging from our embassies, from our consulates across the world. And of course, we have a background that first, the ambassador of Uganda to Canada, Ambassador Joy Ruth Acheng, was returned to the country on the 21st of August 2024 on allegations that she participated or she acted in a manner that is not acceptable in that particular country, and the authority of Canada decided to declare her unwelcome on that land. And of course, we also have Ambassador Mayiga from the United Arab Emirates, who is being recalled by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs on allegations that he oversaw the creation, setup, I don't know how to call it, putting up a casino at the consulate of Uganda in Dubai. Quite unfortunate, and he's coming back into the country. Investigations are going on. We want to assess how Parliament can come in to assist on some of these challenges that keep emerging, but also what this means for Uganda in the international sphere and the diplomatic relations of this country with every other country, especially those that we have challenges at this point in time. And joining me on that conversation is a panel of distinguished citizens of this country, whom I will introduce starting from my extreme left, from Electoral Laws and Governance Institute, the Executive Director, Ms. Charity Ahimbisibwe. Charity, good morning and you're most welcome.
Thank you very much, Phil, and a very good morning to all our viewers.
Thank you. And I also have a political analyst and a professor of political history, Professor Mwambutysa Ndebeesa. Professor, good morning. You're most welcome.
Good morning to you. Good morning to the listeners out there and all participants in your individual and various capacities. Glad to meet you.
Thank you, Prof. Now, I will start with you, Professor. For the last 2 weeks, we've had a series of videos running on social media of the Ugandan ambassador to Canada, former ambassador because she no longer holds that office as we speak, on the street, saying a lot of things, trying to confront other protesters that were donning National Unity Platform attire, telling them they are not allowed to protest, saying NRM is the overall in everything. A couple of messages she was putting across. And days later, we see the Canadian authorities saying, oh, please, that is not acceptable, as the Geneva Convention talks about how consulates and ambassadors should behave on foreign land, and they declared her unwelcome in that land. What is your assessment of that whole situation, and what does it mean for Uganda at such a time when the image of Uganda in that part of the world has not been so good?
Thank you for that question and the topic. I think that a diplomat or diplomacy or being an ambassador, whatever we want to call it, is kind of a career or a profession. And each career or profession or undertaking, especially by a government, a big government official at that, falls under certain norms and etiquettes, and you are supposed to behave in a certain prescribed standard in your position. And so anybody holding such a diplomatic post should have or should be imbued with certain forms of intelligence. I will call this one now emotional and relational intelligence. Emotionally, how do you control your emotions? But also, how do you study and gauge the emotions of the people you are talking to so that you know how to appropriately behave and how to relate? So, you see, intelligence is not about cognition. That is what you have in your mind. what you learn, knowledge-wise, but also there is emotional intelligence. Sometimes it's more important than cognitive intelligence when you are dealing with human beings, because you must relate, you must control. So, and what should guide somebody should also be in the background of your profession or your calling or your career, that it has got certain standard behaviors. If you are a teacher, there are certain ways you should behave before your class. If you are a doctor, you should behave in a certain manner vis-a-vis the patients and the clients. So when you are a business person and you are in a shop, you know how to behave. And if you behave contrary to that, then either you will be brought to order if you are working as a public servant or an international servant, or society will bring you to order. So in this case, I think this can be looked at from a wider perspective of our diplomatic career in Uganda or foreign affairs assignments in Uganda. Uganda has got certain foreign policies and principles. Maybe that we are supposed to be harmonious with everybody, we are supposed to be peaceful, we are supposed to attract investors, we are supposed to attract tourists, and things like that. So, when you are assigned a career, you should be sensitive. Unfortunately, for a long time, or since NRM came into power, I'm told almost 80%, if not 90% of the career diplomats, of the diplomats are not career diplomats. They are just political appointees. And therefore, they have not been schooled into diplomacy. And I think this is now manifesting in these two incidents within 2 weeks. For such an incident to happen to a country, a small country like the Uganda, which has got very few missions abroad, it is very, very unfortunate. But it goes back, it boils back to the way we are looking at that docket of government called diplomacy. Because if you politicize it in such a manner that you send their activists, they will go and practice activism beyond the professional ethics, standards and etiquettes of a diplomat. So we are not privy to exactly why the Canadian government decided to make this high commission, I think, because Canada is a member of the Commonwealth, a person non grata. But the little we saw, even in the media, is that she did not carry herself in a manner a diplomat is supposed to carry oneself. As I told you earlier on, every career, profession, occupation has got certain etiquettes, certain standards, certain norms. There are certain operating norms, standard operating norms of a particular career. So I think in this one, she actually, I would not have expected her to do what she did, not to do what she did, because I am told her background, she was a politician, she was an MP, she is used to confrontation, she is schooled into the norms and the values of confrontational politics, polarized politics of Uganda. She is schooled in the politics of intolerance, not tolerance, not diplomacy, and she went and practiced that. And unfortunately, she was in a wrong position in the career diplomat. That one was a wrong position. You should carry yourself according to the expectations of that career. But you should also carry the image of Uganda. If you are attracting tourists and they see you behaving the way she was behaving with what? I mean, those who were demonstrating, that is what expected when you are an activist, when you are demonstrating, when you are in civil society, that's what you are supposed to do. But as for her, she should have used her emotional intelligence, and relational intelligence, and he knew that she was a diplomat, and maybe she would have called them to her office and sat them there, or she would have sat and communicated through telephones and other areas. But the way she was dressed, the way I saw her dressed in his sleeveless dress, just like me now, this is not the way diplomats are supposed to appear. Then she called for that action of that government. But she could even have done other things that were not diplomatic. And therefore, as I conclude this segment, this discussion here, is that it is we should learn lessons. There have been calls for government to rethink its position or the appointing authority, in this case President Museveni, to consider putting in such sensitive positions career diplomats or career personnel. But he has continued to appoint politicians, and for her, she knew she was appointed there under the qualifications of being an activist, of opposing the opposition. Remember, I'm told she's from a UPC background. I'm not sure. And if you are a convert, all converts, historically and now, and in different ways, whether religion or culture or whatever, all converts try to wash away the former image. They want to get the new image. And she thought that by abusing those demonstrators, throwing around their hands and shouting on top of her voice, that was going to demonstrate that she is now NRM, and more NRM than those she found there. And that is what she was demonstrating. Unfortunately, she was in the wrong position, and therefore they have asked her to be at home. I don't know what would happen. But anyway, as far as she's concerned, I think if she was doing activism, political activism, trying to demonstrate that she had converted fully, trying to demonstrate to the NRM that that is a way to harass the opposition, maybe she could even be promoted, but not in the career diplomatic circles. She can come back to the ministry and maybe be made the permanent secretary or any other position or anywhere else. But in diplomacy, I think she has quoted a controversy that may not allow her to build a career there if she thought she was going to be a diplomat.
Thank you, Professor. Charity, you have an ambassador that sets up a casino in a consulate. You have another that is on the streets trying to throw away people, intimidating them. And on my phone here, I'm reading a tweet from the ex-account of former High Commission of Uganda to Canada, and she says, yes, we are ready for hooligans and liars.
I see.
Canada is not your place. What is your reaction to such conduct from our ambassadors?
So I think I want to associate with Professor Mwambutysa's positions and clearly state that in international law, okay, diplomacy is a key area because it is engagement of a state to a state. And that a person who represents a country embodies the values, the customs, and the beliefs of the country for which they are representing. So if you look at the Embassy of the United States, that place is gazetted to be the United States in Uganda. The moment you step in that embassy, you are on the land of United States, but in Uganda. And that's the same thing that happens with our diplomatic entities wherever they are. So if you step in the embassy of Uganda in Canada, you have stepped in Uganda, although it is in Canada. And that is why there's a lot in international relations that is called diplomatic immunity, okay? That they will not try you as a diplomat in that country, even when you commit a crime, I'm going to tell you about some diplomats who were exported for arms, for buying arms, firearms, or compromising the security of the country in which they were diplomats of Uganda to those countries. Now, they could not be tried in those countries because international law does not allow for you to be tried in a place where you do not have jurisdiction. Jurisdiction is the power of court to try a case. So you're only brought back to your country, and that's where you're tried from in terms of jurisdiction. And so that international diplomacy is granted for people who behave a certain way. And I think Professor Mwambutysa was very extinct on that. Number one, a diplomat is not supposed to speak a certain way. You're not supposed to criticize simply because you must criticize. I'll tell you that when Ambassador Natalie Brown came into Uganda, we had just had an election in Uganda. And Bobi Wine had been locked up in Magere. And she went to Magere. And the security bounced her. They didn't allow her to get into Magere. And the Ugandan society went and said, there is a backlash. America has been blocked from entering Magere. Because one country had blocked another country. She embodies the United States of America. So if she was stopped from entering Magere, they had stopped the whole of the United States. And that is what happened. And there had to be a lot of diplomatic back and forth. Natalie did not speak a word. Even when the security lumped her off the ground of Bobi Wine's home and put her into a car, she entered the car diplomatically. They drove her back to the American embassy. She did not shout at them, oh, you Ugandans, you're even like a fake country, you're so small. You know, for us, we're a powerful country. I'm the United States. For you, just a Uganda, small, little country, dotted wherever. She could have done that because she's coming from a very powerful country. But she did. She kept quiet. Not even one single word. She did not even address the press, which was close by, which saw what happened and started reporting the American ambassador has been bounced by Ugandan security. And she didn't. She just sat in the car and went back. Now, in terms of diplomacy then, compare that kind of diplomatic behavior and the behavior that you saw with our own ambassador. Now, in diplomacy, our ambassador had Ugandans who she found protesting in Canada. What are the customs and traditions and beliefs of the Canadian people? Because you see, when you're a diplomat, the moment you get into a country, the first thing that you are required to do is understand the customs, traditions, and beliefs of that country in which you are, such that you do not clash. As much as possible, adjust towards that custom, but without compromising your diplomatic standards. So, for example, diplomats cannot wear a certain way, and I think a professor referenced it and said if he appeared like this for a diplomatic meeting, they would throw him out. As much as possible, you're supposed to be professional. Put on that suit forever, high heels, nice, you know, a certain way, the diplomatic way. And so as much as you wear is the much you speak. You will rarely speak through the mouth. You will speak more through the journals, through writings, through memos, through communications, protocols. Those are the standards we're talking about. You communicate through protocols. You write. A protocol is an instrument that a diplomat is saying, this is the issue. And so when she found these people protesting on the street, she had no right to be shouting back with them, no matter how much of an activist she is. She even made allegations. Now, the Canadian people will be people who believe in justice, who believe in tolerance. Now, for her, she was overboard in supporting just the NRM. But you see, when you are a diplomat in Canada, the embassy of Uganda in Canada represents all the people of Uganda who are in Canada, not only NRM supporters in Canada. Otherwise, it should have been called the Embassy of NRM in Canada, but it is the embassy of Uganda in Canada. So it represents the views of whoever is Ugandan and is in Canada. Whether you are of a certain shade, a certain color, you agree or don't agree with the government. And your part as a diplomat is to play the balance game. Balancing behavior is a big thing, Philip. Not very many people have the temerity to be balanced. Most times power corrupts, and it corrupts what? Absolutely. So when you have power and you think you're wielding it, you think, she told them, the problem with you people of people power, you abduct yourselves and then you make the government look terrible. Was that an allegation coming from the ambassador? Was it a true statement? And you see, these people of people power actually recorded her and they put out the videos. Because in diplomacy, you're not supposed to say. So let's assume that Natalie Brown, in the other instance, stood and said, okay, we shall see between the United States and Uganda, who is more powerful. Do you really think she would have stayed as a diplomat here? Have we also seen that of recent, after the sanctions that came from UK and the UK Parliament and the conversation that leaked from the UK Parliament into Uganda, the UK ambassador to Uganda, Kate Airy, was called back home. So when we see things like the ambassador of Uganda to Somalia, Simon Mulongo, he was deported from Somalia back to Uganda. He was given 7 days to leave Somalia. And they said because he did not follow the AMISOM protocol. AMISOM is an army that is supposed to keep peace as a concerted army. Now, when he went there, he was supposed to promote security values of a united Africa. He went there as the African Union Mission Deputy Director. So it also matters, what are you going as? What are you representing? What are you holding as you sit in that office? That is what determines how you behave, how you respond, what you say, and where you are. But there is not anywhere within diplomatic decorum where you can be caught on a street shouting with people of a different political dispensation.
Thank you so much. We are joined by Honorable Silas Aogon from Kumi Municipality. Honorable, good morning and you're most welcome.
Thank you so much, and that's my name. Let me replay my name, Aogon Silas, MP Kumi Municipality, independent. So expect an independent opinion from my side.
Thank you, Honorable.
Not independent leaning.
Let's speak that
independent opinion.
Let's speak that independent opinion. We have two ambassadors, one declared persona non grata from Canada, another is recalled by the ministry because of allegations of a casino in the consulate. What is your reaction of this happening at such a time when the country is struggling with improving the image? We have sanctions all over. What's your reaction?
First of all, when such things happen, sometimes it's for the good of the nation. I say so because people have learned lessons. Whatever has already happened. Those who are still there will now learn that it is not good to do ABCD. For me, that's a big one. Number two, I think it's good for the country to check the background of the persons that we're talking about. And their appointments. Are they people who are appointed as career diplomats or they are politically motivated diplomats? Are they activists? So that is something very, very important. And I think eyes should be on that. Yeah.
Well, career diplomats, lessons for the people that stay in those offices. Professor, you see, this being focused on Parliament, we want to really look into how Parliament can play a part in trying to make sure things are done in the right way. Earlier you talked about it being, we have almost 80% of our people in foreign missions as political appointees, and we have a Parliament. Does Parliament even know about this, and how much can it influence some of these appointments to see that the right people are put in the right places to do the job?
Oh, thank you for that question. That begs the question of executive legislature relationships or relations. And they should relate anyway, but they relate also in a certain manner befitting a modern democracy. And yes, Parliament has the role of oversight. The mandate of appointing diplomats and how diplomats work, that is the mandate of the executive. But it is also the mandate of Parliament to oversee the appointments and activities of the diplomats. And that is what they should do. Each one should exercise their mandate, autonomous of the other, although, again, working towards the one goal, which is the national interest, in this case, national interest internationally. The challenge with Uganda is that our parliament, and we have a member of parliament here, is not independent. And the president, Museveni, I'm a Musevenist in the sense that I follow him, what he does. One time he did say, when the members of parliament were requiring the president's office, in our parliamentary buildings here in Kampala, there is the president's office. Or the president's office at some point, I don't know when, decided to have offices there, one of the sides of the wings. And the members of parliament wanted that office to be shifted so that members of parliament could occupy that one. There was a very big debate and a request by parliament, and President Museveni told them off. Are you aware we captured you? That's what he told them. That we captured you. We captured this parliament. And the message, I hope, went that our parliament, actually since colonial times, if I can go history, has not been so independent, and it has had a legacy of not being independent. You find that the Legislative Council was created, the parliament, the colonial parliament, kind of, in 1920s, as far back as 1920s, up to 62, of course, at independence. But for all that time, the executive was fused with parliament. In fact, the governor was more or less the speaker of parliament, and yet he was the head of the executive. And since independence, we have had times when the executive has interfered with parliament and even fused them. Maybe the listeners out there, especially the young ones, is it Gen Z or Gen Z, whatever, I don't know how you call yourselves.
That's right.
People do not know that even President Museveni was a speaker of parliament during the first NRM period of 10 years. Because he was the chairman of National Resistance Council. Effectively, he was a speaker. And it has happened in more or less like that throughout our history. So, the functions of parliament as an institution, among others, are affected and shaped by the history of that parliament. So that's why I have given you the history of the parliament of Uganda. And the parliament of Uganda has never liberated itself, because when you are dominated, you don't expect the dominator to emancipate you. They have never emancipated themselves, and that has been the relationship. Let's take the Commonwealth tradition we have of independence of parliament and take the case of UK. Because even the current parliamentary democracy we have in Uganda, by the way, almost all the whole world, originates from UK. And UK, I don't know in which century, whether it was the 17th century or 16th century, 16 something, I think, or 50 something. By the way, Britain had at one time experimented with being a republic, I think for 5 years. And that's when the executive and the legislature had conflicts and tensions. And parliament, the executive, the then king, was trying to suffocate parliament, and parliament was trying to find its space. And when the executive could not relent, parliament actually removed the executive. In fact, the king was beheaded. Was it King Charles or somebody like that? I forget my history a little bit. Was beheaded. Is it Owen Revolution or whatever? Anyway, we can go back and check. And when they were reconstituting that kingship in UK, Parliament actually brought back the executive on its terms. They said, we are sovereign, we are representatives of the people, and we are bringing you back on our terms. And that's why in Britain, you see almost the prime ministers always go there to literally beg Parliament what to do. But anyway, I am trying to demonstrate the history of our Parliament. So, finally, to go back to your question and I conclude, is that yes, the mandate of the executive is to appoint ambassadors and do diplomatic work, foreign relations work, but the Parliament should exercise its oversight mandate of diplomats and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs generally. Is it doing it? I am afraid not as effectively as it should. The MP here mentioned that there were lessons learned. Since these ones have happened, then we are going to move forward. But I think Charity here had just mentioned a little bit that Honorable Mulongo had been deported from Somalia not long ago, possibly 2 years ago, possibly 3, I don't know. But this one is happening again. That means there are no lessons learned. But similarly, in the learning of the lessons, it should not be the behavior of the members of the diplomatic circles of Uganda. It should also be a lesson to our executive to appoint people of a certain caliber, of a certain persuasion, of certain norms, of certain outlook, of certain behavior, of certain emotional and relational and cognitive intelligence. Not just appointing somebody because he has demonstrated fully how one can be, for example, a supporter, an activist, an intolerant person with such a temperament. I think we should appoint, as Honorable has pointed out earlier on, based on certain criteria, but Parliament, which is supposed to approve them, also has a blame. Why doesn't Parliament do a background check to some of these people and see their intolerance levels? Me, I suspect this MP had certain intolerance levels. But in the case of Dubai also, it is a question of incompetence of the ministry as well as the diplomats out there. But it is also a question of impunity. I don't care attitude. So you think that the political behavior you exhibit in Uganda, you'll go and exhibit it in Dubai. No, those ones have got their procedures, they have got their norms, they have got their behaviors. So here there is this question of I don't care attitude. What will you do to me anyway? Parliament, we know you are captured. The judiciary, we know we have got cadre judges there. They will not do much to us. The citizens, we know that we can take them some perquisites, some small monies here, and therefore you don't feel accountable to any organ of the state or the citizens. Now you go to Dubai and you think you are also not accountable to the country that is hosting you. You are not accountable to the laws in that country, and you dare import, if it is true what we are hearing, you dare import casino gambling materials in a country which proscribes law. Now, am I talking law?
Yes.
Proscribes gambling.
Yes.
So Ugandans are gambling. We have gambled enough. So as the MP has said, maybe we should learn a lesson to stop gambling. I'm talking about gambling in a wider context now. You don't just go to another country and turn a diplomatic mission into a casino hall. How dare you take those bad behaviors outside the Uganda? We are fighting those bad behaviors here because that's corruption anyway. We are talking about corruption in this country. That is political corruption. That is diplomatic corruption. How dare you? How? It is beyond being a criminal issue. It is actually a form of political corruption that must be looked at not only in Dubai, but in all our diplomatic circles. It means some people might be having bars in our diplomatic offices or diplomatic residences. They might be selling marijuana. Maybe they have not been caught. They might be doing all manner of things. How dare you import machinery that is prescribed in that country, as well as take it to the embassy of all places? Why not hire a go-down store somewhere in Dubai as you shift them to Uganda or anywhere? How dare you take them to the embassy? So there is this impunity that we have a correct line. Nothing you will do to us. We are ideologically full. Others are ideologically empty. They are ideologically, what is the other word used? In terms of ideology, for those that you don't agree with, you are bankrupt, you see. And I wonder who is ideologically bankrupt, because even if somebody is a reactionary, he's not a progressive, he has got a reactionary ideology. Even if it is a conservative ideology, even if it is a criminal ideology, it is still an ideology. There is nobody who has no ideology. But you find that concept being used to refer to label the opponents that they are ideologically empty and backward. So I guess when you go with that attitude of feeling that you are ideologically full, and you take it to Dubai and you import casino materials and you house them in an embassy, then that is ideological arrogance.
Well, thank you, Professor. Charity, you see, we talk about accountability and oversight of Parliament. And Professor talked about Parliament approving the people that are going out there, the budgets that are going to those places. How much can Parliament influence these happenings in terms of who is going, that one should not go, how much money can go there, and what is it being used for exactly? Does Parliament have such power, and indeed, is it doing its work?
Okay, so I like what Professor is saying. Professor started by giving us a historical background. And that historical background, he tells us about why we do not have the succinct separation of power as was envisaged by Montesquieu. Montesquieu is the philosopher behind that story of separation of powers. What we have in Uganda is more of checks and balances, that the institutions check and balance each other's powers. They are not independent of each other. So the judiciary does not stand extremely independent of the legislature, neither does it stand extremely independent of the executive. There is always crisscrossing power. And many times the executive is overbearing on the other two institutions. Why? Because, for example, our judges are appointed by the executive. The Chief Justice is appointed by the executive. Okay? So the Judicial Service Commission recommends, and then the executive appoints. Now, Parliament...
But can I chip in just one thing also, where there is a direct fusion in our, I think, constitutional law?
Yes.
The Constitution of Uganda.
Yes.
The serving army officers in Uganda belong to the executive,
yes.
Ideally.
Yes.
But they are also in Parliament, yes, as members of Parliament, directly actually elected there. Not even these ones who go there as ex-official ministers. These ones. So we have representatives of the army in Parliament. Now, I thought the army are an arm of the executive. But in this case,
they are fused.
They are also in Parliament, legally and constitutionally. I just wanted to chip in how the two are fused.
So when you look at that fusion, it causes a lot of confusion. And I'm going to explain how it causes a lot of confusion. Every once in a while, it becomes difficult for you to draw the line and advise the executive objectively. Because at one time, he will instruct as the overbearing power. There is an ambassador of Uganda to Abu Dhabi, who was also deported from Abu Dhabi, expelled actually. The reason is because she called the members of parliament to go and look at the enslavement of Ugandans in Abu Dhabi. She was the daughter of Madvan. She had been appointed by the executive. She was recalled back because the people of Abu Dhabi looked at enslavement. Why are you alleging that our country promotes slave trade or slavery? And yet it was internationally a criminal activity. But in her view, there were many Ugandans who were suffering there. So because of the diplomatic backlash, she was returned. She accepted and came back lying low. She did not make any noise or any fracas about it and whatever, and she came back. And the president reappointed her as a diplomat. To where? Okay. To Denmark. Okay? Now, in Denmark, she was given money for COVID-19 to help COVID victims. She supplied it to her missionary and was shouting about it freely, how she had this money and whatever, and she started giving it out again. There was again another diplomatic backlash, and she had to come back. So how come Parliament, okay, could not on 2 occasions stop this one person from being reappointed, even when they already have issues about them, but the president still overruled and reappointed her, and she's still a diplomat even up to now. So
is just there.
It's almost like a rubber stamp. You see the Honorable Aogon is laughing. It's almost just like a rubber stamp. So if the president gives his authentication, he authorizes that Charity is our diplomat. Phoebe Ottawa here in Kenya, she was recalled by the president. She said, Kenya is just beginning to be sweet for me. You, Hassan Galiwango, you can't come here. There are many embassies which are empty. China is empty. Japan is empty. You go there. Don't disturb me. I am here. Can you imagine? But the executive insisted and told Parliament that they, the executive, had recommended Hassan Galiwango. And it was again for political reasons of Umbale. That is why Hassan Galiwango was being sent where? To Kenya, as the diplomat of Uganda to Kenya. So the institution of Parliament, therefore, begins to be weakened towards the executive. The executive wields more power and can direct around Parliament the way they want to direct. That affects the quality of service delivery that a country would even obtain. Uganda, for example, I mean now, like the members of Parliament cannot say, okay, now let's scrutinize this person. Everybody whom the president recommends will go through. The only person who has ever failed in Parliament, and that was during Kadaga's time, was Seya. Remember, he had been appointed as a minister. And Parliament did scrutiny and said, this one, no. They refused. But the president was aware that that was going to happen because he did not meet the standards. Okay? He was aware it was going to happen. And this time he lay back quietly because he had psychologically played on Seya's mind. So it can happen that Parliament can become serious and scrutinize and carry out accountability on their part as an institution. But most of the time, because they know that the executive is overbearing, they do not even carry out the basic requirement as Parliament of assessing the kinds of people that have been forwarded to foreign missions.
But additionally, Mr. Muliisa,
yes,
is that the members of Parliament are expectant. Increasingly, President Museveni appoints diplomats from Parliament. You look at them, most of them are honorable, ex-honorable. And so, if you put the bar high for those diplomatic appointments as Parliament, then that scale will be used as a criteria against you. Next year, you are not voted in Parliament. And remember, our Parliament has got a high turnover. So everybody expects to be appointed, and therefore cannot easily jeopardize his future chances.
There's that argument. Very, very true.
Such an avenue to take
Why not? It's the norm.
Honorable, what mechanisms do you have as members of Parliament to check some of these challenges that emerge, and indeed are you using them?
Yeah. First of all, our toolbox is full. Our toolbox is full. We have a lot of gadgets.
Are they in use?
And they're in use. But first, I want to say that it's my prayer right in this studio that in come 2026, I come back to Parliament. Pray for me so that I don't be amongst the list that is trying to seek for what?
The ones lowering
Appointments.
the scale.
Lowering the
In diplomatic areas. Because I've not done any course in that area. So
No,
rather
me, I
pray
want
for me.
100% attrition rate for this parliament.
No, there
11th
shouldn't
parliament.
be. There shouldn't be. Because there can never be a bad community that
Throughout.
all people are bad. No.
I'm calling for 100%. I actually have said it more than 2 times.
That will
because
be tantamount to closing Parliament down. Which will not be
You need
Number
institutional
two,
memory.
Yeah, you
know
need
which
institutional memory. And there have been good members
And
of Parliament.
continuation.
yeah, we
And there
have
have
the
been
one of Gulu. I forget his name. The
I
one he
can
has
tell
been
you,
telling
it's
us
not
recently.
even very important for you to name any, because even when you name people, you'll find that there is something that person also has done which is not good. So we rather say not everybody in that parliament is bad. But also there are things that parliament has done which are good. If we go to the answer and we pick out, you will realize indeed that there were moments when you cheered us, said, yes, parliament has done it. Those moments have been there. When you talk about the issues of vetting, for instance, I'm aware, besides the person you just mentioned, of somebody who had been appointed to be state minister responsible for roads. The Minister of Works came from Eastern Uganda. He couldn't make it. Why? Parliament in assessing said they are not fit for this position. So Parliament has done things. Recently you saw that people were taken to jail. Moreover, colleagues, members of Parliament, out of the work of Parliament, a committee of Parliament responsible for trade. So for that reason, you'll be able to see that Parliament does work. At certain moments, there are things that you really see like you are not comfortable with. At the moment A, you see, really here, Parliament has performed. Yes, and it is not necessarily that when you say no to executive, you have demonstrated your strength as Parliament. At certain points, the executive will explain to you, and indeed you'll agree with them that they have a point. So it's not about just disagreeing with the executive all the time, but you have to examine the point. What is the submission? What is the substance?
Honorable, how much of explanations does the executive bring to convince you on the people that, for example, the diplomats, you mentioned yourself, political appointees, we see ministers sometimes and everyone is saying maybe that one was not fit for that office, permanent secretaries, everywhere. How much
First of all, for us, we know one thing that the executive appoints, but they send those people to us. And then Parliament will scrutinize those people's papers. They scrutinize their behaviors. Remember, in the SOPs of Parliament, the public is open to do what? Submit. So Parliament, should I tell you, Parliament is a people-centered Parliament, if we're talking about the Parliament of the Republic of Uganda. Our focus is on the...
What makes it? What are the criteria that we can use to say it is people's?
Because everything that we do it with the people on focus, the people in mind. So even when we appoint people, certain people can even go ahead and say, we're petitioning. Don't appoint this, don't allow this one through the gate, because we know what this person has done. But it will be bad if the public knows something about someone and they keep quiet. It becomes a disservice to the country. So the difference between the parliament and the people who elect in parliament is zero. Should you find a dirty parliament, then the voters are dirty. So we must move together, because that is how we are made. And the executive and the parliament are meant to work together, but not to fight all the time. It's not about being fused. It's not about boxing each other, but it's about playing your role in order to complement what the other arm is doing. So, and that is how we play it. Our toolbox is full, and we pick out the right tool at the right time. We use legislation, we use appropriation, we exercise oversight, and we also represent the voices of the people. Now I'm here, and I'm picking a few voices again. So next time when we sit in Igulu, some of the ideas I'll be picking from what has transpired in this house, because I'm listening.
So through you, Mr. Moderator, may I request maybe the Member of Parliament here to move a private member's motion to demand that some offices, like the Chief Justice or IGG, be appointed on air like they do in Kenya. Because you said you are a people's parliament.
Yes.
And you want a lot of citizens' participation.
Citizens' participation.
So can we also go a mile ahead and have citizens' participation in appointment of, say, the chairman of the Electoral Commission?
Yes. So I
wish you could move that one and see how you debate it.
It is not just about moving a motion, but should be about creating legislation around participation. So it's something I've been mooting around myself as an independent member of parliament, that we should have the Citizen Participation Act created by Parliament of Uganda. So that when we talk about participation, we should define what it means. What is participation?
So that people are not participating.
Just like that. Because sometimes even when people are asking about where to place a government project in the villages there, they say, we talked to the LOC3, the LOC1, and maybe LOC5.
And that was
and
participation.
Call it, public what? Participation. Is it really public participation? Public should be having some bigger kind of outlook when you talk about public participation. So I think it's very, very important. I want to agree with you. We need to enact a law that speaks to the level of participation across the board for all sectors. For instance, this one. For now, even the law allows the public to participate, because you all know that once I've moved a motion and I'm coming up with a private member's bill, that bill is handed to a committee. Parliament will always publish and say, there is a law now on missions abroad, how ambassadors should conduct themselves, and they will ask you for witnesses. Who are the witnesses? The public, general public. Come and give your views. When you are ready, please inform the clerk to Parliament. But what has happened in Uganda? Ugandans have given up. If they have not given up, they are just busy. They don't mind. They want to blame Parliament, and yet they are not participating themselves. Everybody is busy with their own work, but people are waiting to post something on WhatsApp or lament. But how I wish people would take work as a serious thing. By the way, work is a blessed thing in the Bible.
But when they went to hold you accountable on corruption, you sanctioned their beating.
We are highly accountable. We are highly accountable. That's why you see, first of all, the Trade Committee of Parliament made a report. All these people you see in Luzira because of money for cooperatives, do you think it's coming from outside? It's not even IGG who started it. It is the Parliament itself to show you the level of action. So that house, sometimes people will say it is so bad. But again, if we are to go around the memory lane and we dig out the Hansard, you will see the positives. And everybody, the last thing anybody should say is that Parliament should be closed. I'm telling you, that one becomes a black year for Uganda.
I'm waiting for that black year.
We need a Parliament. And
I want that black year for Uganda. I'm dying that Parliament is closed as an institution.
I can tell you, Parliament
it's the only one thing God would have done a miracle for me. I pray daily. Because how do you waste 20 billion in regional sittings and you tell us you're going to bring something new from there? We have told you don't go. You don't want to listen to us. You have a public gallery where citizens can come and give their views in a public gallery. And you lie to us that now you're going to pick the views from the citizens across the country. I've been keeping quiet, and let me keep quiet for diplomacy's sake.
Yes.
But I really pray, 100% Ugandans, please don't bring back these MPs of the 11th Parliament.
The problem is not with individuals.
Yes.
The problem is systemic.
So may God listen to me. At least may God listen to me and bring me
The
back.
problem is systemic. So it is not individuals. You will bring the other individuals who will perform worse.
I wanted to complete.
Then we close the institution is what I have prayed. 2 prayers. I prayed the close or 100%.
I used to think like that.
Yeah.
And you know, before you become a member of Parliament, you have a different perception about that house. When you reach there, things change. The way you see things,
shake hands.
the way you do things, everything changes.
You get swallowed up.
Now, one of the discoveries that I've made.
One of the most objective.
Let me give a report about Parliament. One of the things that I used to think about Parliament is that you can have things happen in 1 minute. You just do this and things what?
Happen.
You must be patient. I learned it about that house. I have mentioned things in that house and I've seen things happen. There now I've learned that parliament is so necessary. Should parliament be off even for just 1 month, there are people who are nearly like dying. When are they calling what? The house. For instance, right now if I opened my phone for you, I have people who have sent messages to me. Somebody was working for a company. That person got an accident. Is now like unable to do anything. But the company up to now have not attended to him in any way. The case is now coming to parliament. You need parliament at any one time, whatever the case. There is no house without that. That's why we sweep and mop houses every morning.
Do you have to travel to Gulu, to Marara?
That was very necessary. You should ask us why. We are a people-centered parliament and we are looking for the people. Where are the people? Some of them are in Gulu.
So in other words,
and we are going there. Let me first finish and submit this. Let me tell you, parliament, first of all, has a very small percentage of the budget of this country. Do you know how much we pass for this country this year? Around 72 trillion. And parliament is taking less than, I think even 0.7%. We need to cross-check the figures. It's a very small what? Figure. So the mistake that Uganda is making is to focus on the budget of parliament as though the budget of parliament is the one which is failing the budget of the country.
Because it is the people's parliament.
Yes, it's the people's parliament. For us, we determine what is good for parliament in terms of making good the ideas of the people. Right now, what we have seen is that confidence building in northern Uganda is something very critical. When parliament sits in Gulu, it returns the confidence, even those who have been fearing to go to Gulu, for instance, that northern Uganda is not peaceful, because people have continued with that perception that there was war in the north. But when the whole arm of government, parliament, sits in Gulu, it brings the whole world into that confidence level that if parliament can sit there, how can we dare now say that the place is not what? Peaceful. So there is a reason behind. We're empowering the economy. But also those people want to taste the money which comes from Kampala. If I spend my little salary in Igulu, they would have also benefited. Why should it be the people in downtown Kampala only benefiting? Let us take the jam there also. There's a lot of jam in Kampala. Can't we distribute it across the country? So parliament is doing, let parliament be allowed to do its work. But we don't want to shut up the voices. Because for us, we listen to the people and we represent the people. All the complaints, we know they are there. Let's pick them. Let's share. We shall distill and see what is good, what is bad. We should not be shy of trying and doing something. Let's do for something for people. At least something that will lift them. There will be a change. And then the other thing, if we are going to say, every time people say no, for us we listen to them and we say, we will fail to work. Why am I saying so? As we talk right now, as we are going to go, there are those who are saying, yes, that's a very good idea. When I come to my sister, she's saying, no, that's a very bad one idea. You will never find people speaking with the one word side of the tongue. Whereas I speak from the center of the tongue as an independent, for you are speaking from the left-hand side of the tongue. Professor is speaking from the right-hand side. So when do we meet?
Right hand?
So a right hand.
I'm a leftist.
A leftist, okay, it should be, okay, you the leftist, and then she will be the rightist. And then for me, the center. So when do we speak with the common side of the tongue? If you are in power, if not in power, but if you are in leadership, and you can't take a decision for yourself, then the country is finished. So at certain times, we need to take what? Decisions. I will be happy for parliament to come and sit in Kumi Boma grounds. Let them sit. I tell them about the issues of my people when they're even seeing live. I don't need to show them videos. I can even move a motion and ask Madam Speaker or Mr. Speaker that please allow that after this, you give 20 minutes or 1 hour for us to move around to show you what I was telling you. That there's a problem of garbage, we need the trucks. There's a problem of the market, we need a new one. There's a problem of traffic lights.
Not moved to Chitezi. And you
of course, those are happenings. Those are happenings.
Civil society. At this rate,
those
very sad.
Those are happenings which have already taken place.
Sad.
And we learn a lesson in everything that happens.
In the Central have always taken you around,
Very
and
sad.
the problems of Central have been talked about.
Yes.
So haven't you seen the roads in Kampala?
Very
Of course,
sad,
that's why you see that there's a lot
Honorable
of work taking place now.
Thank
But
you.
there are weaknesses. For instance, by now, we should be
Very
done with
sad,
that.
Honorable
We can see the good roads in Kampala.
Very
don't we?
Yes, I can name them.
I beg
problem. Now,
every Ugandan,
if
may
you-
God answer my prayer.
If you
vote out every MP.
No. People are not allowed because they will have voted out themselves.
Every MP and let's shut down this parliament. If we're going to be thugged and treated like this, like slaves in our own country.
No.
Let us go to the polls and demonstrate that we are not slaves.
In
that
Jesus,
we have a bit of brain in our heads.
In Jesus' name, that will be overturned. So
No,
what I'm
Jesus,
trying to tell you...
may you stand with your people.
Yes.
Pastor Honorable Silas,
Yes.
thank you for that submission. Then
Yes.
we have to go into a very short break and we shall continue.
Yeah, but I wanted to
conversation
make just
again.
1 second of my summary that
Okay.
Parliament is for the people. Parliament at all times is people-centered, except for minor weaknesses. Everybody has a weak side of them.
As you eat more and drive bigger cars.
Those bigger cars are for the people. When they want me in Kumi urgently, I must get there.
What did I tell you?
Urgently.
Once
I
you
do
free?
something to help.
So when you are having
These
abused,
vehicles I've seen for the speaker and deputy speaker and whatever they are for me.
Can I tell you?
Thank you so much.
Number 1, number 2, and
you are
number
not
3
serious.
are not like us. They are different. Those are our leaders.
Short break and we shall be right back.
Digital rights are those human rights and legal rights that allow individuals to access, use, create and publish digital media or to access and use computers, other electronic devices and telecommunication networks. Digital rights include a right to freedom of expression, information and communication through technology, a right to privacy and data protection, a right to credit for personal works, a right to universal and equal digital access, a right to identity, a right to anonymity, a right to be forgotten, and a right for protection of minors, among others. The state's digital rights are frequently violated through various unfair actions, for example, blockage of websites and social networks, theft of credentials, unauthorized use of people's data for personal gain, privacy intrusion, online censorship, arrests and intimidation of online users, internet blockages, and the proliferation of laws and regulations that undermine the potential of technology to drive social, economic, and political development worldwide. It is hence every citizen's responsibility to respect rights of other digital users and to speak out or report to the responsible parties when one's rights are violated.
Welcome back from that very short break. It is Focus on Parliament on Civic Space TV. I am Phillip Muliisa. In this episode, we are discussing the mess in our diplomatic missions across, and we are specifically looking at the Canadian mission and the one in Dubai, where our ambassadors are being recalled or declared unwelcome in these particular places. And we want now to draw solutions to some of these situations that we see unfolding to our country. Professor, we've had a conversation about how these people get in these offices and the things they do and how they're operating, but especially through Parliament. How can we assist, because until now we know it's the role of cabinet to appoint and make sure these people are operating, but how can Parliament assist in trying to see that the image of Uganda internationally is not affected? Ugandan businesses are not affected. People coming to Uganda as tourists do not change their mind. Investors do not change their minds to come to Uganda as a result of the conduct of our people in those countries.
Thank you for that question. I think, of course, there are very many challenges and weaknesses and limitations here and there, but we can do some improvement. The best challenge I see in Uganda's body politic or political culture is that the politics in Uganda is less interested in foreign affairs and foreign policies. Even during the campaigns, nobody loses or wins because of his or her foreign policy position. Even the president, the presidential candidates, members of parliament, I don't know if when the speaker also stand or whatever committee they want to, international affairs, international relations are not a priority of our politics in Uganda. And yet, we are living in a globalized world. Policies that affect us are no longer only made in Kampala, they are made in Arusha, They are made in Addis Ababa, they are made in Brussels, they are made in New York, they are made in Washington, they are made in Geneva and wherever. So we have to look at international affairs and how they impact on our livelihoods, on our policies, and on our systems in the country. And this calls for now increased interest by the citizens and by Parliament on how our foreign affairs are conducted. We hardly know foreign policy in Uganda. What is the foreign policy of Uganda? What is the foreign policy of Uganda? And even if it is there, how many have bothered to read it? How many have bothered to discuss it? And how many have bothered to know even whether the policy is followed and implemented, or the unstated policy is the one which is followed and implemented. So there is no clear participation of the citizens in as far as shaping foreign affairs are concerned. And also Parliament participates in most cases when they are having, they are looking for money to go abroad. Because I have not heard very many issues discussed there in Parliament, and at times when there are diplomatic scandals, there have been many, by the way, that I've seen in the papers, but the follow-up, I think, has been very, very, very weak and limited. When you hear the parliamentary committees, I don't know, the Parliamentary Committee on Foreign Affairs, I don't know whether it is one of the most active in this country. I don't know how many people would know that even there is such a committee in Uganda. Is it a household name? Or they are the traditional ones we know, Public Accounts Committee, I don't know, those presidential committees. What about foreign affairs? Because foreign affairs is very critical. Even when Uganda, the president after elections is appointing the Minister of Foreign Affairs, you don't hear very much debate about that such a minister. Who is this minister that is going to represent Uganda? Who is going to be the face of Uganda internationally? The one who is going to negotiate international treaties and agreements. How much of Parliament gets involved in ratifying, first of all, but also debating international affairs? Even other countries like South Africa are very active about what is happening in Israel and Palestine and Gaza. I have not heard our Parliament bothered about what is happening in Gaza. It does not bother about the military coups that are taking place in Africa. The other day there was a military coup leader, successful from Gabon. He was here visiting, and I didn't hear people talking about him at all. I had him pass here, then he went to visit Salim Saleh in Guru, and he went to the airport, and he went back. Now, as there was no debate, dictatorship in Africa is none of our concern. Even what is happening in Congo, in Sudan, is hardly our concern. A few times we hear that this man of Sudan is called what?
Garang?
No.
The late Salva Kiir?
No, these are very ones who are fighting each other in Khartoum.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. Once in a while you hear they have come to State House. Parliament of Uganda, I don't know what they talk about them. We have got even our members of Parliament of Uganda who are in the African Parliament. They have not given us a position that Uganda is taking to stabilize the Great Lakes region generally, because, you know, we are the sick man of Africa almost. The Great Lakes region in East Africa. You have got a war in Khartoum, a war in Juba, a war in Addis Ababa, a war in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. And hardly do you hear those issues among the members of Parliament. They have got a day when they table, you call them national concerns. What is the word?
Usually
issues of national concern.
At the beginning of every sitting.
There is issues of national concern.
After prayers and a communication from the chair.
Yes.
We react to the communication. After that, we go for matters of national importance.
Now, I haven't heard something of the national importance of Uganda's relations with outside world. And you cannot tell me that the international agreements and treaties and whatever the systems are not affecting us. We have been negotiating EPAs, that is Economic Partnership Agreements with EU. Kenya signing differently instead of signing as East Africa and finishing, and we are in the same customs union these members of parliament are keeping quiet. Can you imagine we are in the East African Common Customs Union, but a country signs an agreement with another country and Uganda is not concerned? You find Tanzania is in SADC. SADC has got its own regime of customs. Maybe they are goods from SADC which come to East Africa, which are not on the same band as those of East African Customs Union. But here we are just keeping quiet. So there are very many issues of international concern that are linked to our well-being, our economy's well-being, but you hardly hear Parliament talking about them. Therefore, what point am I driving at? The point I'm driving is that we should be interested, we citizens, I also blame us citizens, because even political party manifestos, they hardly have any discussion about international affairs other than putting their provision, we shall have peaceful relations with other countries.
Even the public during campaigns, they will hardly, if I go and gather people and I'm giving to them my ideas about why I want to go to parliament,
they will be bored.
To me, nobody
if
will
you tell them international issues.
If you tell them about foreign affairs, then you are not the candidate. So that's why I'm telling you the difference between the members of parliament and their voters is not or zero in English.
But the interests are different. I know. The views may not be different. So, Parliament should also, and the executive actually, and the media, and civil society, should try to prop up some of these things which affect the country. I have the privilege to be associated with an NGO that deals with international affairs. And they have, because I'm not a day-to-day person there, but at least I know that we deal with issues of international affairs, and we've discovered, or we know, that those issues of international agreements, of international treaties, be they investment treaties, be they trade agreements, be they climate agreements, they have got a lot to do with the development of this country. But people are never concerned. And yet other countries and citizens are concerned. One time, I normally give this example. The Director General of the WTO came to Kampala. Hardly anybody, not even the media, knew that the WTO Director General was in Kampala. Some of us, a few who were associated with NGOs, were invited to meet him. Actually, we told him that today what we are doing is not what is done in other countries. You should have been met by demonstrations at Entebbe Airport, protesting against certain WTO rules, things like issues on vaccine policies, issues like intellectual property rights that are not favoring third world countries like us. Nothing of that sort was done. So, really, this country needs to go beyond what we are doing and get interested in international affairs. And therefore, this this diplomat would not have behaved the way she behaved. And these ones in Dubai would not have done so, maybe, if they knew that there was the oversight to them by citizens and by parliament.
Thank you so much. Charity, you see, Professor raises an important point. When you listen to politics, for example, there is an election coming in United States. Candidates are put to task to speak to what their thought is on, say, the Gaza war, the Ukraine war, the situation in Africa,
China Sea,
Taiwan, challenges with Taiwan. In Uganda here, not even the president, while giving their communications and campaigns, talk about what their thoughts are on the war in Sudan, like Professor mentioned.
DRC here, Rwanda, Congo.
And of course, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, the Honorable Keloliem, has on several occasions mentioned that we do not have a written foreign policy document, and he says we do not need it because there is a president and he thinks so well about this particular situation.
Maybe he said it outside Parliament.
He is on record more than once saying this.
Google, you go.
What is the source?
New vision.
I need to share with you. And why do we find ourselves in a position where we do not care about what the bigger world thinks about us and what we have to do with it?
And I think that is where our dilemma as a country starts. That we have poverty, we have disease, we have ignorance. And these are things that Obote talked about long time ago, and they've been harped everywhere. People say you have poverty, you have disease, you have ignorance. And everybody walks around with them. We are ignorant on many of these laws. And you see, everyone who goes even to schools of law, even schools of governance, right now I'm doing a training on policy for the United States at the American Center. The reason why they look at policy is what drives growth across, and it's their interest in different spaces. And I tell you that for each training that you attend, your head thinks differently. You in fact stop to focus on small problems here, and you focus on them in lieu of how broad can you solve them. And I think this is where the president is. And he has had this problem. Himself also, him is to blame. He likes to keep within a small pool of people whom he says, Professor Mwambutysa has introduced charity. So because Mwambutysa knows charity and I know Mwambutysa, so I will take charity. But he needs to look at professionals and who is out there and can deliver. And there should be a system that is free for all and fair to all. So I don't care that it is Muliisa coming. I don't know Muliisa. But what are his strengths in as far as international relations on the law of the sea are concerned? What is there in the law of the sea? We have what we call continental shelf. Continental shelf is the area where there is a lot of opportunity for countries to trade, for countries to pick resources, for countries to pick minerals, and it is governed by the UN law of the sea, the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea. Now, very few people even understand how that law of the sea works. I've been interested in, even lawyers themselves, you have to first specialize to understand what the Convention on the Law of the Sea is. Now, if you tell us about issues of organizing around trade, he has been telling about World Trade Organization. All those things, they are treaties, they are protocols, they are governance codes on how you're going to trade with another country and why you should. What are your interests? That's why for you in diplomacy, that is when you begin your terrain. And I started by talking about international law. That once you become a diplomat, you begin to look about, to think about the international terrain. You think about the IMF. Pick the IMF documents. Look at what are the interests of Uganda in as far as the IMF is concerned and the programs that IMF is going to come up with. The US had a document called US-Africa Relations and the agenda of US-Africa for the next 40 years. Kenya picked a lot of their interests from that document, and their president went and met Biden over the same. They've been negotiating at different levels. Their civil society organizations are busy organizing and mobilizing around that. But what do we see in Uganda? You demobilize civil society organizations that try to organize around these international frameworks, and you demonize them to look like they are imperialists and only propelling the ideas of imperialists. And then you also taint them to be, what do they know?
Homosexuals.
Leave alone homosexuals. They taint it to be homosexual, but they also espionage, all those things, compromising the security of the country, foreign agents. That is what you're now beginning to be branded as, because you're interesting yourself in international frameworks and interesting yourself in international policy and how to organize better in terms of economics, in terms of trade, in terms of growth, and even in terms of growing this civil society. Because these civil society organizations that he was talking about are the ones that push on different fronts. So you have a civil society in governance on elections, you have a civil society in trade, in economy, you have a civil society organization that is looking out for all these various aspects. If I'm going to trade with Congo, what are the issues there? Why is that war never ending? What fuels that war? What other, when we had a diplomat who was, he was called Fari, he went to Sekedi's land in Congo. He was ignored for almost 6 years. He could never talk to the president of Congo. The president of Congo did not recognize him as Uganda's diplomat to Congo. And yet he's supposed to have the interests of Uganda. Now, if for 6 years you're with the president and you can't break the ice, then what have you benefited the country? You went to sleep and eat? Why didn't the country then change you? What was the problem? Why was Sekedi not paying attention to him? Are there diplomats who have also come here and did not benefit anything for their countries because they didn't work well with President Museveni? So those are the things. So if you're going to be a diplomat of Uganda to a certain country, you start by looking at broadly these international frameworks and how they are working. Right now, one of the biggest chains of changes is going to be on climate change. Everybody is talking climate change. But what is climate change? What is the UN Charter on Climate Change? What is it? What are the details of that one? What are the different chapters saying? And what does it mean to organize yourself around that? Before you even tap into the money, how will it help our agriculture? How is it going to help our policies? And now that would be the debate on the floor of parliament. But we don't have many people who are as educated, and the elites who are supposed to drive these discussions are blocked. They are branded a certain way, and then they are also not given an opportunity to serve. I think that there must be a shift for the president in appointing and in assessing who he is appointing to these places, whether he knows you or doesn't know you, but as long as you are professional and you will do your work within that spectrum with the skills set that is required, you should be appointed.
Thank you so much. Honorable Silas, you see, they talk about the international instruments and UN charters and so on. And she says one of the things that is running the world now is issues to do with climate change. People are talking artificial intelligence. People are talking energy transitions. And when the people of Kumi elect you, like you request them to re-elect you in 2026, they expect you to read all these documents, interpret them, and make a case on their behalf in parliament, such that they are safe in a world that is going to be run by these. You are not doing it for the people of Kumi. Why?
I'm doing it for the record, because you have nothing to prove that I've not done it. You see?
Do we have an instrument on artificial intelligence?
We have done a lot. Artificial intelligence is something that became serious of recent. And Parliament is moving systematically. You cannot have something new on the table and then you work on it just there and then. You need to understand the world and then move with the world and then, yeah, so we'll be there. As far as I know, Parliament of Uganda has done its part. But of course, every institution has their weaker part. Sometimes we have those weaknesses. Even in a church, you have seen Christians.
Too slow.
I don't know what speed you expect Parliament to run at, so that I tell them. Would you love them to move at 180 kph? What is the correct speed? Because as far as I know, Parliament is running at the right speed. So what is the standard speed for Parliament? It is not there by law even. But what I know is that Parliament is working. And we sit every day on Tuesday, actually every week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, as long as Parliament is not on recess. 2 p.m. onwards, until the Speaker of the House adjourns the House. So Parliament is working, and it's working through committees. We have the Foreign Affairs Committee. We have PAC Central, PAC Local Government. All those committees are serious. The day you get interested in the work of Parliament, 100%, is the day you'll get to know that Parliament is working. And if you decide to go and read about Parliament, you'll not finish. You'll grow old before you finish what Parliament has done. There is a lot.
Can I make one allegation and then you correct me?
You can make it, and that's very, very important.
Yeah, the last time I checked, the committees had sat, came up with committee reports, and I saw the Speaker saying they have been overtaken by events. Keep them. and they were hereby kept. Was that the correct line?
Not keeping them. Maybe the issue was, maybe they passed them what they call omnibus.
No, they were not discussed.
So when you see, our rules are designed in such a way that there are powers that are given to the speaker is for the good of running the house systematically. And
So
indeed,
that was,
and
that was
indeed,
for the good of Ugandans.
yes, it may be
that,
so.
that parliamentary
That particular
committee reports were not discussed.
that particular report maybe
No.
didn't come to my.
All of them. She dismissed them. She said they should go.
I can't make a big comment on that because maybe it phoned me out of the country or what, but I don't know what happened. But it could be that indeed whatever was discussed was caught by time. For instance, now I have seen.
Why was it caught by time? That means your speed is slow.
Not slow.
You asked us one about the speed, and I am telling you that the speed should be in such a way.
Can I tell you why?
All parliamentary committee reports should be discussed.
Can I tell you, the work of parliament has financial implications. Sometimes work is given to committees, but the money to do that work is not there. For those buses to run to the community, because we need the public to participate sometimes, we need fuel, we do not have it. So it delays the work of what? The committees. Now, look at this issue here. You are preparing a censure motion that you want to censure what? The commissioners. Somebody has run to court. There's a ruling now which is saying in court that what the commissioners did was legal, accepted under the law. What do you think now happens? Those are some. I don't have a ruling for it, but you can imagine that kind of thing.
We should agree that Parliament is not representing the people.
It is representing the people very well. The problem is that the people are not maybe participating fully, because after voting, people will keep quiet. I only have a few people. Now I have my sister here. You'll find that Charity is very, very active. But how many charities do we have in Uganda? Because for me, I can pick 1, 2, 3 very important issues that I will carry to the house. Professor here has given me a lot that I can carry to the house. How many are doing that in this country?
Can I give you
it is just a few.
Can I give you the last one? You are a member of parliament.
Yes.
And you are speaker of parliament.
Yes.
Went to a district.
Yes.
In Uganda.
Yes.
And mentioned publicly that stealing government money, bringing it to your people, is fine, is okay, is moral. What is your take, and what are you going to do about that?
Maybe that was a comedy. Because
So
for me,
I
I don't take it as something really. If she said it, it's regrettable. Because I will not buy into that.
Are you resident in this country?
Yes, I'm
You
resident
didn't see
here. I was
In
not.
Rwengu?
I didn't see it personally, so I cannot. I'm not a witness. I'm not a witness to that.
No, you see.
But if she said it, that's regrettable. That I can say.
So can you
But
follow it
sometimes
up?
we all make mistakes.
Can you follow it up?
It's regrettable.
Listen, can you follow it up?
A lot of people followed it up.
And how
that
do
I
you know
believe.
then? How do you know?
They followed it up
You said
because
you don't
I have.
know. How did you know?
You see, what I'm saying is, for me, I was not, but I didn't witness. But I have heard people talk about it. I didn't witness.
Yes.
I didn't witness.
Anyway, let me leave
Thank
it.
you,
I didn't
Honorable.
witness.
Okay.
Honorable. But maybe you should pick interest at
Yes.
least. But by Google itself, you can easily.
I'll do that. That's an assignment. I'll do it.
And then do what?
Of course, I will think about it.
Then maybe you can do something about
Hey,
it.
very important. I'll think about it. So you had a question for me. Let me finish with that. You wanted to ask me something.
Maybe you were saying you were talking about you were not sure of the report that was shelved, but there was also another, I think, pronouncement about Kosase. They were
Yes.
supposed to do some investigations on matters that happened 10, 5, 20 years ago, and
Yes.
they were asked by Parliament itself. You can correct me, the exact office that did that, that whichever case that happened more than 10 years ago should be left, and we continue with new cases that are emerging in the country. And you imagine people that could have been affected by a situation that happened 10 years ago. So hopefully you know about that.
I think what is very important is for us to follow the reasoning behind it. There is always a reason behind something being done. For instance, one, you are going to investigate and you find that the state has already solved this problem. What do you investigate? You are going to, all investigations are very expensive.
What if the problem
They are
is
very
continued?
expensive. That's the why I'm saying that there must have been a reason. And the positive reason must have been that the issue was already settled. Why would you go for investigation when you know the matter has been settled? So those are the answers.
To ascertain closure.
Because, for instance, it would be good for you to cite that particular instance so that we go deeper. Like now he has brought out the issue of the speaker going somewhere. That is something you can trace. So can you mention a case which is traceable so that I trace and it bring the reason? What was the reason? There must be a reason behind it.
Yeah, the reason could be cheating.
It could be, but we have not confirmed. It's not yet a fact. So
if you want to be corrupt, that is a reason.
No. So we need to go and check what was the reason.
Yeah, the reason was corruption.
Thank you, Honorable. Unfortunately, time is very much fast spent. We have about 10 minutes to get out of studio. Let's use these 10 minutes to create a way forward in terms of correcting these challenges. Indeed, like we've been doing. Is it possible to change the module of appointment of ambassadors and the people they work with? Is it possible to get people that can listen to their technical teams? Is it possible to get ministers and people that are fit for purpose in this country? And is it possible to have the president reconsider some of the appointments he has made in the past to see that we can replace them with people who are of viable and relatable competences to the tasks they have in those countries, in this country and everywhere? Yes, Professor.
Quickly, I can say that this issue of our diplomats sometimes embarrassing us has been ongoing. That's at the level of embarrassing. But also in terms of inefficiency, even the president has complained that, we don't get enough tourists because our ambassadors are sleeping on the job. We do not have enough investors or the rightful investors because our ambassadors are not doing the right job. But at the same time, the population has been pointing out a certain weakness or limitation within the appointment system to say that at least you mix it so that you have at least 50-50 career diplomats and political appointees. But the president has continued to appoint almost 90%, some people say. I mean, of all the ambassadors we have, I don't think we have more than 3 who are career diplomats. You have got political appointees, but even political appointees in itself is not necessarily negative. But you find some ambassadors being mentioned once when they are ambassadors, high commissioners, anywhere. And you say, but has that person existed in Uganda? How can somebody who has not had a national profile, who has not discussed things in parliament, and most of them are former members of parliament, how can he or she now go and represent us in the capital city, which is the capital city of the world? Will he not get lost more? If you can get lost in Kampala, and nobody can recognize you when you are passing through Parliamentary Avenue,
Washington.
How much more will you get lost in Washington, London, Paris, or Tokyo? So at least the president should have certain criteria that is objective, not because you know how to shout the most. Indeed, he has had these 2 converts, nothing insinuated, but you can see what has happened. The people who are trying to demonstrate that they are no longer UPC. You see, you have to demonstrate clearly that you are no longer UPC, you are no longer with the opposition, and then all of a sudden, emotionally, you go to the street to go and exchange hooliganism with the
hooligans.
Because she wrote that hooliganism is not acceptable here in Canada. Instead, they have deported her as a hooligan. So, isn't that ironical?
It is.
That you labeled people hooligans and you concluded that they are not wanted in Canada, but again you are deported from Canada as having practiced hooliganism. Ironies will never end. But we need to rethink our diplomatic circles, diplomatic missions appointments, and diplomatic works, so that this country gets the image it deserves. We want to demonstrate that we are tolerant, that we are a peaceful country, a harmonious country. And when such things like people demonstrating arise, yes, you are supposed to handle them as a diplomat, but you handle them diplomatically. You also don't behave the way they are behaving. Mind you, they are not diplomats. You are a diplomat. For them, they are activists. Once you put activism into diplomacy, it will not work. Just like if you put diplomacy in activism, it will not work. She's an activist. If she starts behaving diplomatically, that when she comes this radio, she has to speak nicely to you, to her colleagues, to whatever.
People will say she has been bought.
They will say that is not fit to be an activist. So you must behave.
She must be hot.
Fitting to your particular lane of
Fit into your line, please. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor, for that. Miss Charity.
The Honorable Aogon is here. Arranging.
Well,
Alleging that what?
He said that I must be hot to fit into the activism because that is the brand. That is the brand. For you to be an activist, you must be hot.
And
No, not necessarily. Sometimes you can be an
But to maintain
activist.
that brand is not easy.
It's
So
not-
by the way, you and a part of us that love that kind of brand.
Yeah.
The moment you switch it off, we also switch off our support
You know?
and allegiance. We move away.
And you also, no, you also begin to relegate on your duties.
Yes.
You actually need people who remind you. So you stop framing
Like
us
parliamentary exposure.
as
Was it exposure?
foreign-
What do they call
as
it?
foreign agents and all those things.
Parliamentary exhibition.
Muliisa, go back to what you were asking because we will not stop.
We are happy we put the lady in the middle.
so yes, what's the way forward? How do we are we
So-
able to change from where we are?
This is how I want to crown this conversation. That the Honorable Sam Kutesa at one time was the president of the UN Assembly. Do you know what it means for Uganda to be president of the UN Assembly? It's no mean feat. When a country holds that mandate, you are in control of so many international instruments and power that if you used so well for your country, you would benefit ultimately. So what needed to have happened during that time is he needed to have been arranging Ugandans on the line of production. Ugandans who are already in the diaspora getting lost and they don't know what to do, but they are already educated. We have very many professors, many doctors, who are just doing teaching assistant jobs and whatever. We also have professors like Mwambutysa back home here, whom you can engage on a line of thinking for the good of the country. They create think tanks, inadvertently more jobs for people, but also create production along those lines. Now, we lost an opportunity because he was allegedly bribed with $500,000 US by a Chinese man who was called Patrick Ho, and he was the Minister of Foreign Affairs at the time. And so he lost the job in 2021 as Minister of Foreign Affairs. So we lost an opportunity that we had gained at the time. We can still work towards getting this international acclaim again. And this time, go back with a purpose. Where is the money? We follow the money in terms of trade, in terms of growth, in terms of interest. Where is it? It is shifting from democracy because now the interests of democracy are also not homogeneous. Everybody is defining it different for themselves. Look at what is happening in the United States of America right now. It is a racism issue. People are mad. The Afro-Americans, the Indian Americans, the Indian African, the whites, and it's all an amalgamation and people pushing back on each other, even if they have these two parties moving on. But you see what Donald Trump is doing. And Trump talks about the white dominance and the white are down there saying, yeah, actually we need back the white dominance, which had existed in all the earlier years. So there is all that. Democracy now, which was sold to us by the Americans, has been demystified by most academics. They've brought a lot of that. And so there is a lot of discussion on, yes, you need institutions to run governance. You need a certain level of arrangement and system to manage you, which is fair to all, elections, but you need to manage it within your various jurisdictions and expectations. You can learn from them. There are good things to learn from them, but there are also good things for you to drop from your end. So let us not only focus on only that, but focus squarely that in diplomacy, we are looking for the money, we are looking for growth. If I am in Abu Dhabi, what is there for Uganda? It is energy. How have they transformed a desert to produce so much for themselves? What can we learn at home for us who have the rain? When I am in Dubai, what is it that I'm picking there for Ugandans? There is a market for goats, for halal meat. How can we organize Ugandans around goat production? There's a time the president went for
White ones.
and signed a deal with Abu Dhabi and said, now we're going to supply you goats non-stop. Ugandans have enough goats. We have now got a good deal. They only supplied goats for 1 year. There were no more goats in Uganda. He said, you're lying. Look for goats. There was no goat in Uganda. The deal died. Why didn't they start by organizing Ugandans around the production of goats at that time and then sign the deal? So we need to know, where is the production? We have milk now and we have a backlash with Kenya and our milk is being poured. What is our ambassador to Nairobi doing? What is our ambassador of Uganda to Nairobi doing in terms of all this milk and this backlash on milk that is happening? What conversations are going on? Have we seen that coming to the floor of parliament? Have we seen parliament agitating from Uganda here for improvement in that we have our Lato milk now selling? Okay, if Kenya is now closed, can we go to South Africa? South Africa looks like it is more welcoming to Uganda. If we don't go to South Africa, can we go to Congo? Can we go to Somalia? Where can we go? What can we channel?
To Algeria.
What can we channel differently? And then organize Ugandans around that. But how many Ugandans are in the milk corridor? Not everyone. So what else can we export? Probably rice. We are importing rice. We are importing Irish potatoes from Kenya. Imagine us importing Irish potatoes from Kenya.
Egypt.
But we are also importing from Kenya.
Yes.
Onions.
And how do we import that when we can grow it in Kabale? When we can grow it in Mbale? Mbale has Irish. Why can't we invest in that and just have our young people grow these things and be the ones to export? So who has our interest in those countries and is instead pushing us to import? I can understand apples because it is a weather issue. But these other production things, we need to sit down as a country, weigh our strength, look at the international protocols, look at where the money is and how we benefit and push and drive through civil society organization, through independent intellectuals, through conversations, and do these things for ourselves as a country. But also the leadership should stop politicking all the time. Petty politics has killed good brains.
Thank you so much. Honorable, where is the money and is Parliament going to look for that money for this country?
Which money particularly?
To deploy diplomatically?
Money to grow the country.
The money is there. And that's why if you Google, you'll find that there's a budget. Every other year we pass what? A budget. That is the money.
What
So
the quality of that budget, Honorable?
I don't know what is the quality.
Borrowing 20
According to
trillion,
every country
foreign
borrows.
aid, and you're only able to collect about 29 of that 70 you talk about.
And if you cross-check, in this room we are around 6 people. You might find that 1 or 2 of us, not specifically, not necessarily me, has a tax obligation to pay and they don't want to pay. So the problem is with the citizens, as all of us. We need to help our country and make sure that we pay the money. Let's be obedient. Of course, now I know the problem also is partly on the side of the executive. Because the little that the people have collected, how have we utilized it? I think that's also the bigger question.
So
Because
how do
also
the people
our
get motivated to pay more?
Our people need to be motivated to pay more. But like in the days of Jesus, the Lord, it's also written in the Bible. People don't want to pay what? Tax. And the Lord, when somebody was asking, what should we do? He said, pay to Caesar what belongs to him. What does it show? People are resistant to taxation. It's something we need to deal with. We must sensitize the community, sensitize the people, let them realize the importance of paying what? In East Africa here, we are below, I think, 14%. And Kenya is somehow above us. Rwanda somewhere above us. Maybe they're even the best in the region.
Even Tanzania.
even Tanzania.
GDP ratio to GDP.
Yes, ratio to GDP in terms of taxes.
Uganda, by the way, is the last of the four.
So we need to pull up our socks. It means the citizens of Uganda are enjoying their laxity. And if you squeeze them, you will see the reaction again. The same people will say this government is very what? Bad. And if as parliament we say this is what we want, they say parliament is not working for us. Have you seen how parliament works?
Honorable, that's why we need to chase the money internationally.
Yes, so chasing the money internationally may not be the best solution.
Actually, markets.
The issue should be the markets, like the professor, as you said, okay, the markets. How do we get markets? And for those markets to work for us, we must be able to have quality. That is able to, yes.
Quality diplomats.
First of all, the quality diplomats, but also the quality products from us.
Yeah, like
because for Europe,
Union,
Europe cannot allow you to export anything that does not agree with the standard that they have set. That one is a must. Most especially when you talk about foodstuffs, for instance. They are so much akin to issues of food safety. Is it safe food? Drugs, for instance. We had the issue of COVID here. Can they allow it in those places? You take it there, you say it works, it cured somebody, they will ask you, how safe is it? They will say, maybe it will work today. Where's the research?
So we need to invest in research then.
They do not believe in our what? Systems up to now. It is something that works against us. And then in East Africa, you were raising an issue with what Parliament has done when, for instance, Kenya has pushed back on our products. Milk, eggs, maybe sugar.
Even oil.
I can tell you personally, the oil agreements, personally, I have made a lot of noise. When I make noise on that floor, it means the whole house is also what? Making noise about what Kenya did. I remember the time when we were seated under what? The big tent during the COVID days. What a heated debate. And I was happy to hear voices from Malaba, from Busia, the MPs who come from the border. The Honorable Macho, for instance, made a lot of voice. If we go to Google right now and you check, you will see that Parliament actually does what? Work. You just take time every day. On a day when you know Parliament is supposed to be sitting, go to UBC. You know that Parliament is working. But most times we don't attend to Parliament. People only turn up to a Parliament when they enter social media and when they enter media houses. Most people.
No, we want to see the outcome of what is said in Parliament.
Yes, so that outcome is something that is complementary. Everybody should play their part. Parliament is playing their part. You find that some people are not playing their part. You expect this from the public, they are not doing it. You expect this from the executive, they are not doing it. There are certain things that we cannot do, but there are things that we can do. Parliament can do this, A, B, C, D. But at a certain level, when you are telling the executive, for instance, that they implement this one and they are saying, or they take their time, you cannot go back to the bush, pick guns and start fighting. Can you do that? That would be the worst. We need peace for us to progress. So someone can blame Parliament, blame. But our issue is, what is our contribution, personally, individually? As statesmen, as citizens, people of this country, what is it that we are contributing to the table to make our land better?
Honorable Silas.
Can I make just one passing comment?
Please.
I wanted to say that this country, whether it is the executive, parliament, or all of us, we need to have a strategic plan to deploy qualitative citizens of Uganda into the diplomatic circles, such that we shall also take advantage of such qualitative citizens to take up international positions in the world, directors of World Trade Organization, the UN Secretary Generals, whatever Secretary Generals of whatever. But it seems we have not had that strategic plan, that strategy to deploy our human resource with the view also to having a big stake in diplomatic circles.
Thank you, Professor. You want to say something?
Yes, very briefly. The resources that Parliament has been allocating to foreign affairs, we now as Parliament should intensify on our oversight to see to it that those monies, the resources are utilized properly. And we need to see good research. Number two, we need to change the legislations. Where the legislation has been weak, we need to do it. For instance, regulations on the conduct, maybe they are not there. How could somebody go and do something which is contrary to the normal?
The casino,
Casino,
really
yeah.
gambling.
It concerns all of us. So maybe we are going to review and check. Was it a gap in the law? Then number two, SOPs, when we are bringing these people to work, how do they get ushered to the table of work? Are they taken through certain orientation, induction, cautioning before they come to the fore? Or we just leave them to start the work? It's not about going to shop abroad and then you come back in the business class. No, we must do something. So we need to increase on the budgets.
For the leadership, for the president, for cabinet, and every other person that is a decision maker in that particular field. Honorable Silas Aogon, thank you so much for making time to the show and for the views indeed. Madam Charity Ahimbisibwe, thank you so much for your views and for making time to the show. And Professor Ndebeesa Mwambutysa, thank you so much for your views and for making time for the show. And to your viewers, thank you so much for tuning in to Focus on Parliament on Civic Space TV. Special thanks to the Center for Constitutional Governance for the power you put together to see that all this is made possible. And special thanks to the team behind the machines. We appreciate the work you do out there from us. We say good morning and may you have freedom always.